We have witnessed an intense few weeks politically. Peter Thiel has warned of an emerging antichrist in the form of an extreme left-wing totalitarian government, while No Kings protesters warn of a rising far-right authoritarian threat in America. At first glance, each side sees a different enemy, but are their fears as different as they seem? Most people think of fascism and communism as ideological opposites, usually placed on opposite ends of a left-right spectrum. However, when we look closely at their historical structures and outcomes, interesting similarities appear, similarities that challenge the traditional linear political model. Let's strip away the veils by defining these terms, unfiltered. Fascism is an authoritarian, ultranationalist political ideology and movement, characterized by a dictatorial leader, centralized autocracy, militarism, forcible suppression of opposition, belief in a natural social hierarchy, subordination of individual rights for the perceived good of the nation and race, and strong regimentation of society and the economy. It has been historically symbolized by the symbol of the fasces, an axe surrounded by a bundle of rods, representing the strong centralization of political authority and power. Communism is a socio-political and economic ideology within the socialist movement, whose goal is the creation of a socio-economic order centered around common ownership of the means of production, distribution and exchange that allocates products to everyone in society based on need. It has been historically symbolized by the emblem of the hammer and sickle, representing the combined strength of workers and food producers. Although fascism and communism appear ideologically opposed, both pursue centralized authority over the means of production and the social structures surrounding them. Each system relies on information control and propaganda to preserve power and suppress dissent. Fascism argues that control is needed to unify the nation around a singular identity and eliminate ideas considered degenerate or hostile to the state. Communism, by contrast, frames centralization as necessary to dismantle class hierarchies and achieve economic equality. Despite differing justifications, both systems ultimately concentrate significant political and economic power in the hands of the state. A unifying thread between these systems is their relationship to socialism, broadly defined as an economic model in which the state or collective controls the means of production. Karl Marx famously wrote that the theory of communism may be summed up in the single sentence, abolition of private property, referring specifically to private ownership of productive capital. Vladimir Lenin used Marx's ideas in Russia and openly declared that the goal of socialism is communism, presenting socialism as a transitional stage between capitalism and a classless society. Historically, this socialist lineage intersects with fascism in unexpected ways. Benito Mussolini spent over a decade as a member of the Italian Socialist Party before breaking with it in 1914 to pursue a nationalism-centered movement. Adolf Hitler's movement adopted the term National Socialism and incorporated certain state-directed economic policies, though Hitler distinguished his ideology from Marxism by rooting it in race and nation rather than class struggle. Both share roots in central planning, state direction of economic life, and the belief that society must be organized according to a singular guiding vision, a worldview traditionally associated with socialist economic theory. With the socialist roots of both fascism and communism established, let's examine the two manifestations that have ignited recent warnings and protests. Communism, the international socialist agenda. International socialism spreads its totalitarian grip by infiltrating worldviews and social institutions, gradually forging a borderless empire through centralized power hubs and policy dictates. This is the form alarming figures on the right, including Peter Thiel, who has highlighted the dangers of elite-driven globalism. Here the world falls under the sway of think tanks and roundtable cabals, where government-aligned entities seize and manage the means of production to advance their technocratic visions. At the forefront are organizations like the World Economic Forum and the United Nations, archetypal roundtable groups pushing a Great Reset agenda. The WEF's infamous slogan, "You'll own nothing and you'll be happy," emerged from discussions on future trends, painting a 2030 utopia where private ownership gives way to shared access for supposed sustainability and fulfillment. Fascism, the National Socialist facade. National Socialism, by contrast, begins domestically, inflating cult-like devotion within a single nation-state before expanding via military or economic conquest, ultimately aiming for global dominance. This is the spectre haunting the left, including the No Kings protesters, who decry the rise of National Socialism through figures like Donald Trump and his orbit. The fears draw from Curtis Yarvin's Dark Enlightenment philosophy, which advocates for a technocratic CEO ruler with monarchical authority to dismantle democracy in favor of efficient, elite-led governance.
What's so bad about democracy?
All right. To make a long story short, whether you want to call Washington, Lincoln, and FDR dictators, this sort of, opprobrious word, what they were was basically national CEOs. And they were running the government like a company from the top down.
So why is democracy so bad?
So it's not even that democracy is bad, it's just that it's very weak.
Protesters spotlight Peter Thiel's Palantir, a surveillance powerhouse with deep intelligence ties, as a tool for AI-driven warfare and power consolidation. Under this paradigm, public-private partnerships dominate the means of production, the left increasing alarms at Silicon Valley's giants like Elon Musk's X and Tesla, Thiel's Palantir and Jeff Bezos' Amazon, which could be building privatized city-states free from democratic oversight. In far-right socialism, the control of production and distribution echoes the West's vision. Ordinary people own little, while governments, corporations, and elites hoard everything. At first glance, these socialist variants differ in control structures. Multinational organizations in international socialism versus corporate tech oligarchs in national socialism. Yet they are deeply entangled. Whichever wins, the same group of people ascend. Musk and Thiel frequent international roundtables, while corporations hire well-paid global advisors. The divide is rhetorical, not personal, a false binary designed to distract from the shared technocratic endgame. But why does any of this matter? Supporters of communism often argue that it promises fairer wages, universal healthcare, and equitable access to essential goods. Advocates of nationalist or authoritarian capitalism, on the other hand, may emphasize economic growth, lower taxes, and a return to traditional values. At first glance, each system appears to offer a different route to social improvement. Yet, as Austrian economist Friedrich Hayek warned, in theory, socialism may wish to enhance freedom, but in practice, every kind of collectivism, consistently carried through, must produce the characteristic features which fascism, Nazism, and communism have in common. Hayek's point is clear. The core issue is not the slogans or promises, but freedom. When ownership and decision-making power move away from individuals and towards centralized authority, whether in the name of equity or national strength, personal liberty inevitably falls. Under both communism and fascism, individual aspirations are subordinated to the collective, enforced by those who claim to act for the greater good. This raises a deeper question. Is there an alternative model one rooted in genuine freedom rather than external control. Researcher Mark Passio proposes a framework in which both communism and fascism occupy the same level on a control-based paradigm. Systems driven by compulsion rather than personal sovereignty. In his view, the path to true freedom does not begin with political revolution or institutional reform, but with internal transformation. Freedom emerges as individuals elevate their consciousness and align with objective morality, rather than surrendering responsibility to external authorities. This idea parallels David Hawkins' map of consciousness, where higher states of awareness correspond with empowerment, integrity, and constructive action. Hawkins identifies courage as the pivotal level at which a person shifts from fear and dependency into personal responsibility, truth, and growth. It is at this level that individuals leave the victim blame trap and can no longer be controlled as order followers of a collective system. By this logic, liberation cannot be imposed from above. It arises from inner development and cannot be achieved simply by voting for a new leader or protesting opposing factions. Lowering consciousness through hatred, violence, or coercion leads not to liberation, but to new forms of control. History shows that revolutions driven by resentment or force often reproduce the very same systems they claim to overthrow. If political transformation begins in anger and division, it risks ending in authoritarianism, regardless of the ideology that initiates it. So we are left with a provocative question. Could a higher form of economics and governance be built on consciousness, cooperation, peace, and personal sovereignty rather than force and fear? To discover this, we will look to Rudolf Steiner's threefold social order. Thank you for watching this presentation by Synarchy Economics. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and a comment and subscribe to Synarchy Economics.